So it's the European Champions League, and this is match day 5. I'm going to look at the 8 games that were played last night in groups A, B, C and D, and of course tonight there's the 8 games in E, F, G and H. Results on those tomorrow. As part of the results show, I'm also going to tell you where the teams stand in the tables. Of course, they're looking to get into the top 2 to qualify for the last 16, which will take place next year in February, and the third place team go into the Europa League. So let's start with the first group, A. Galatasaray were at home to Bruges. It was a pretty miserable affair. I watched the highlights. The Turks got an early lead, then they hung on to it. Bruges, not very enterprising. Final score then in Istanbul was Galatasaray 1, Bruges 0. The big match at the Bernabeu Stadium, Real Madrid against Paris Saint-Germain. As it stood, they were virtually both in anyway. Real made a great start, opened the scoring on 17 minutes after Paris had really started well. Late into the second half, Benzema got the second of his brace on 79, but then a rally from the Frenchman who put Neymar on in the second half. Mbappe and a late equaliser by Sarabia led to a 2-2 finish. And so that leaves Paris comfortably ahead on 13 points, 4 wins and a draw. Real are on 8 points, that's 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 loss. And Bruges have got 3 and Galatasaray 2. So that means is that Paris, Saint-Germain and Real are into the last 16. And Bruges and Galatasaray will be waiting on the results of the last fixtures to see who goes into the Europa League. Bruges are at home to Real and Paris Saint-Germain are at home to Galatasaray. Group B now, and first look was in Belgrade, Red Star Belgrade against Bayern Munich. Well, it wasn't much of a contest once the Germans opened the scoring, and then we had a goal fest from Robert Lewandowski, who netted 4 in total, and Bayern won by 6 goals to 0. The other match at the New White Hart Lane, Spurs against Olympiacos, well, that was a completely different kettle of fish. The Greeks opened promisingly. Spurs looked very lacklustre. The defence really didn't know what they were doing, and Mourinho's expression from the sideline told it all, and they went 2 down. But then a dreadful piece of defending from a corner by one of the Greek defenders, letting Dele Alli, who reduced the arrears to 2-1 at the half. And then into the second half, Spurs found their mojo with a brace from Kane and another goal, I think, from Mora. And they ended up comfortable winnings by 4 goals to 2. So that leaves the tables Bayern 100%, 5 wins, 15 points. Spurs have got 3 wins and a draw, and that loss, of course, at home to Bayern. Red Star are on 3 and Olympiacos on 1. Last fixtures, Bayern are at home to Spurs. Spurs will be glad that fixture is really academic. Olympiacos, they are at home to Red Star, and of course if they win they'll go into the Europa League. Any other result and Red Star are in. Both Bayern and Spurs into the last 16. Group C, and it was a particularly an interesting game at the Etihad. Manchester City against Shakhtar, and Manchester City didn't look on their game, to be honest. Aguero is apparently out now for some time, so Jesus was up front. Mahrez put on the bench again after that great performance at the weekend, and it showed really. Ederson was back, but Manchester City eventually got in front, but it was hardly convincing and wasn't that surprising when Shakhtar levelled the tie, and it ended up 1-1. The other game in the San Siro Stadium, Atlanta at home to Zagreb, and Atlanta got the better of this one. They won by 2-0. So that meant that Man City was safely through on 11 points. Shakhtar are on second with 6, and Zagreb are on 5, and Atalanta are on 4. So those three teams are still in with a chance of getting into the last 16. And of course there's Europa League. Zagreb will be at home to Man City in the last group game, and that leaves Shakhtar at home to Atalanta. Anybody's guess who's going to join City in the last 16 there. And finally to Group D, the match at in Turin, Juventus at home to Atletico. These two teams will look still favourite. Juventus were already in, really, unless something remarkable happened. Of course, they drew in Madrid earlier in the group. It wasn't a particularly great game. Ronaldo got himself into all sorts of bother when he hurt his leg trying to keep the ball in play at the corner flag, and he broke the flag. A lot of bluster, but eventually Juventus nosed in front, and they kept hold of that, and they ran out 1-0 winners. Now that was pretty significant for Atletico, because in the other match in Moscow, Lokomotiv lost at home to the German Bayer Leverkusen, lost by 2-0, and that leaves the table. Well, Juventus are into the last 16 on 13 points. Atletico are in second with 7, but on 6 now, on 6 points are Leverkusen, and Lokomotiv are on 3. So final match day then. Atletico are at home to Lokomotiv. A win, of course, will guarantee them last 16. Leverkusen, on the other hand, faced Juventus in Germany. So they've still got a chance of possibly getting in if Atletico slip up and they win. So that's about it for this first round-up. As I say, we'll be back tomorrow. And, of course, particular interest for British listeners will be Liverpool at home to Napoli, and Chelsea are going to Spain to play Valencia. Okay, it's the Champions League, and it's match day 5, and these are the matches that were completed last night. Groups E, F, G, H. In my earlier podcast, I inadvertently told you that in Group A, Galatasaray had beaten Bruges by 1-0. That was a mistake. I must have been somewhere else, because in fact Bruges got an equaliser and it ended up 1-1. But that didn't affect the tables for that group, which I explained. So let's have a look at Group E then. Liverpool were at home to Napoli, and they got off to a poor start. They went behind. They managed to claw back and got level, but it ended that way, 1-1. Now, in terms of the other group match, Genk were at home to Salzburg, and Salzburg overpowered the Belgians and won by 4-1. Now, what that means is, in the final match day, the tables as they stand are Liverpool with 10 points, Napoli have 9, and Salzburg have 7. Genk are out of it with 1 point. Now, the final match day pits Salzburg at home to Liverpool. Now, in the event that Salzburg beat Liverpool, it would then be decided on the head-to-head, and it could come down to goal difference. Liverpool, you may recall, beat Salzburg at Anfield by 4-3. In the other game, Napoli are playing Ghent, and they are at home. So in the event that Napoli were to lose, then Salzburg could beat Liverpool and Liverpool would still qualify, but that's highly unlikely. We would expect that Napoli would beat Ghent and secure the top spot, and then it would be a straight face-off between Liverpool and Salzburg. So that final group game is absolutely crucial for the current reigning European Champions League holders. Okay, interesting, isn't it? Let's get on to Group F. The clash that caught people's eyes was in the Nou Camp. Barcelona at home to Dortmund. The first match in Germany had ended all level. Barcelona far too strong here. Messi chipped in with yet another goal. Suarez, and then Griezmann got the third. Consolation for the Germans, but they lost by 3-1. The other match was in Czech Republic, Slavia Prague at home to Inter Milan, and Inter Milan absolutely destroyed them, winning by 4-1. A brace for Lukaku and another couple for I can't remember his name. But how does that leave the group? Well, Barca sailed through there on top with 11 points, but Inter and Dortmund are level on 7, and Slavia are out of it. Now, in the last match day, Dortmund plays Slavia at home, so one would expect a home win there. Inter are at home to Barcelona, and it looks likely they're going to have to win, and then it could come down to head-to-head. And I don't know exactly how that would fall at the moment. Into Group G then, Leipzig were at home to Benfica, and Benfica went 2 up, but the Germans rallied in the second half and levelled the tie 2-2. The other game was in Russia, Zenit against Lyon, and Zenit comfortable win by 2-0. So Group G looks like this. Leipzig are on 10 points, and Zenit and Lyon are on 4, and Benfica are out of it with 4. Sorry, Zenit and Lyon are on 7 points, and Benfica are on 4. Zenit go to Portugal in their last group game, and Lyon are at home to Leipzig. So I think it's still all up in the air, really. Leipzig would go through if they got a draw, but in the event that Zenit and Lyon won, then all 3 teams would be on 10, and then it would be down to that head-to-head and goal difference. So still wide open, Group G. In Group H, Chelsea Chelsea were away in Spain at Valencia, and they got off to a poor start, but they then turned the game around, but Valencia got an equaliser and to level things up, so it ended 2-2. The other game in France was Lille against Ajax, and the Dutch comfortably won by 2-0. That leaves the tables as follows. Ajax are on 10, Valencia 8, and Chelsea 8. Lille are out of it. Final match day, Ajax are at home to Valencia, and Chelsea are at home to Lille. So still warm favourites, Chelsea, to qualify. But they might need some help from Ajax, because if Valencia were to win, then the head-to-head would go in favour of Valencia, because they beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge by a single goal. So that's your Champions League roundup for match day 5, and hope you enjoyed it.